All right, let's get on with it. Here's Sam Crosby in the man cave and doing his best right now. Senator Matt Canavan, of course, joining us right now from Rocky. So let's get into the polls, all right, where, Sam, Prime Minister's able to say, I've never lost a news poll. I just showed dissatisfaction, right? Every income group, every demographic with the exception of 18 to 34, it's men and women.
Right. You know what? I'm going to answer your question, but can we talk about this subject when the polls are going in our favour? You know, next time they're going okay, can we have this? Can we have this conversation again?
If you want to come back after the election, we'll see what happens. But okay, so today we end up again in this scenario where the budget, you know, unequivocally good news under conventional political wisdom, but they're in a hole. Do you think that the election by its very nature means all of this gets reset, or does stuff start to get baked in here?
Look, I take your point. Budget surpluses, I take your point from the editorial. Budget surpluses look terrible when people are genuinely struggling, and I work for a charity. I see the struggle literally every single day that I'm at work. That said, the one thing that I don't think you want to do right now is start going and spending and spraying this money all over the economy.
And I'm not saying $1,000 for everyone. I'm saying
sure.
$1 billion for charities.
Sure. And, you know, on behalf of my work, I will take it, right? I will take it. But quite seriously, you know, right now, the one thing that the government is hanging their hopes on is an interest rate cut sometime between now and whenever the election's going to be. And you're only going to get that by, yes, ratcheting up large budget surpluses. So, yeah, I take the point that it is a difficult thing to say to someone who's struggling to put food on the table. It's okay, we've got a 15, and that's going to result in a lower interest payment, and therefore your rent's not... It's a long bow to draw. But if you think about what's actually driving the pain that people are experiencing, it's generally related to interest rates.
Matt, what does the slices of the slices of the slices, either in the poll or certainly the attempt to say, hey, good news today, what does it tell you?
Well, the election's up for grabs, that's for sure. I mean, the Liberal National parties will remain the underdog here. We're very rarely does a first-term government get defeated. Hasn't happened since the Great Depression, although Tony Abbott basically did it and got dudded at the finish line.
Correct.
So it's a tough slog, but it's very, very close. The Australian people, I think, remain unconvinced about the mission, the purpose, the lack of a plan from this government. It's very tough times. Look, it's tough for everybody, but the government really just rests back on slogans, not a real plan. Their budget has been marked by massive spending. All economists say that. Yes, they delivered a surplus, but that's on the back of a booming commodity market, bigger terms of trade than we had after the GFC. And they've gone and spent most of that, and that's added to inflationary pressures. They've hired 30,000 public servants. That's an extra $7 billion on the payroll. They've chucked $30 billion at various green, hydrogen, critical minerals boondoggles. It's just not the thing that should be done right now to try and rein in inflation. All Australians know that they've got to tighten their belt right now, and they just don't see their government doing the same. So people are disillusioned and they don't know what's going on.
But equally so. I mean, Matt, I'm pretty sure not many barbecue stoppers having a chat about per capita recession, right? But the reason I show those numbers, the reason I talk about what that English bloke was saying, that it's not about the last most recent inflation number, it's about all the additions that come before it that basically feel like another brick in your a brick in your saddlebag constantly, let alone the 12 interest rate rises. So okay, 1, 2 comes down, well, you're still 10 up from where you were before the journey started. I think we're in a scenario where we're going to end up having a conversation that's going to be held among a certain group of people that are going to say, but look at this and look at that and look at the stock market. The economy's great, but the vast majority of people watching, hearing or listening to it are going, for who?
Oh, I think you've summarised the government's trap right now. They're in a bit of a trap where they do say, look, isn't it great? Inflation's dropped by 0.1%, or isn't it great? You know, the economy's grown by 0.3%. Nobody feels that. The government is effectively telling you to not believe your lying eyes. Your eyes in front of you see the price of everything going up in grocery stores, much higher than what CPI prints at. Most things have gone up 20, 30% easy in the last few years. And and your standard of living going backwards. They see that. The government points to a surplus today, how great it is. Well, you know, if you actually delve into the numbers, and I'm sure not many people do this, but get an inkling of it, that in fact, over the government's forward estimates, the next 4 years, they'll rack up on their own estimates $122 billion of deficits. They have to borrow $122 billion extra. And they want credit for the 35-odd billion of surpluses they've meeked out in the last couple of years. I mean, it's absurd. The budget is massively expansionary right now, and that's adding to people's pain.
So, Sam, for the Labor people that I hate watching us right now, and again, I appreciate it, it all counts as ratings, I do appreciate it. You've spent a bit of time in the States, we'll talk about that in a second. But obviously the Democrats are trying to turn around and say, don't worry about the full story of the 4 years, look at where we are today, where we're slightly, the fire is not as intense. But of course, that collective effect is what you have to be confronted by. So how are the Democrats saying to somebody who goes, well, hang on, everything's cost more than it was, everything is higher than it was, how do they convince them that, again, their lying eyes are their lying eyes?
Yeah, I don't think you're looking at persuasion too much in the United States now. Now it's about getting out the vote in your areas and suppressing the vote in their areas, and that goes the same way for both sides. One of the really interesting people that or groups we spent some time with were doing the ad buys for the Democratic Party, and they were saying essentially in Pennsylvania you have run out of air to buy. Every single ad is basically Trump, Harris, and so we went there. We were in Pennsylvania for a day, and we copped a feel of this, and literally every single ad. And so no one's trying to persuade you about a policy merit or anything like that, which is why when we look at the news, we're seeing Harris not give you any kind of plan and Trump's sort of typical crazy ranting.
We shall have much to say about this a little later. But again, different in Australia because you don't have to do that. Everyone is forced to go out and choose, meaning that the reality of the data.
It means that our elections you focus on, negative gearing and the tax treatment of investment properties.
And didn't the government do great on that last week?
Sure. But we're having these furious debates about, frankly, relatively minor changes, and we're not talking about guns and abortion and these things that motivate your base to get out to vote, because your base is going to be there.
Yeah, correct. I don't know what the Australian version of MAGA is, but anyway, you can send me an email, paul@skynews.com.au.